If you like movies with crazy action and creative violence, you might want to check out SISU. It's not a long movie, but it packs in the gore. But how's the story? When an ex-soldier who discovers gold in the Lapland wilderness tries to take the loot into the city, Nazi soldiers led by a brutal SS officer battle him. The trailer for this movie gives you a good idea of what you can expect because it shows two shockingly brutal ways to end an enemy's life. One involves a very sharp knife, and the other, a creative use of a landmine. But the insane action, it doesn't stop there. We follow this old man who is out alone in the vast landscape mining for gold, and we watch him panning and digging numerous holes with only his horse and his dog as companions. Now he finally discovers this huge vein of gold, and after packing it all up to just presumably cash it in, he encounters a Nazi death squad as they make their way through the country, razing anything and everything in their path. Now, the old man is unassuming, and despite a tough and weathered look to him, he seems a bit harmless. But once some of the Nazis poke the bear, they quickly find out that this dude is not at all harmless. In fact, he's his own one-man death squad, and that's when the insane carnage begins. Now, this is one of those movies that you really want to see in a packed theater so you can get the collective visceral experience of everybody squirming and audibly wincing when the violence ensues. And it's not just going to be once or twice. There are some very creative uses here, one of which takes place in water, and I've never seen it done, let alone even contemplated it, but it's horrifyingly awesome. There's another that showed some gruesomeness in very close detail, and I, along with just about everybody else in the crowd, we physically retracted in our seats. And I don't want you to think that this is an overly disgusting film. Yeah, the violence is heightened and it's brutal, but it's all in context and it's crafted well. There weren't any points where that I was nauseous. I was just very uncomfortable because my brain was imagining what certain actions would feel like, and I didn't want to feel those at all. The story is told in chapters, and the way the titles come up on screen, it's a bit reminiscent of a Quentin Tarantino film. And the whole execution of the movie feels like a mixture of a Western and a graphic novel with a World War II backdrop. And there's a meandering pace to the storytelling, even though the actual pace of the movie is quick and efficient. And it's just an hour and a half, so it's not long at all. But what they pack in it is spectacular. Jorma Tomilla plays the main character, and I love that for so much of the movie he's silent. He just doesn't speak. He only uses his facial and body expressions to convey his torment or exhaustion. And despite his silence, he's got quite the presence, creating this aura of just supernatural mystique. Not that he's some specter or anything like that, just that what he does at times, it defies anything natural. Aksel Hennie plays the SS soldier in charge, and I love how ruthless and cruel he is. There's a certain level of ridiculous humor that accompanies a lot of his actions, especially as he directs his soldiers to carry out orders that are sure to get them either wounded or killed. There are several humorous moments, especially with the cast members' expressions, as they watch something terrible happen to a fellow soldier and then are directed by Hennie to attempt the same feat that the dead ones just tried. The incredulous looks, they're wonderful as they weigh their options. There's a high possibility of death if they go after the old guy, and there's certain death if they refuse the order. And yet, there's still some hesitation. Now, the violence is off the charts, and it's creatively executed. And so many practical effects are used to add to the realism of what we see. These are grotesque images that show us in great detail the damage and wounds a body can sustain. And it's not necessarily for the squeamish, but like I said, it's not going to make you nauseous. And it's all carried out in a captivating and exciting way. Now, the movie, it isn't without its shortcomings. First, the movie opens with a voiceover narration that lays out what's going on for the story. And this would be fine if the story didn't go on to show us exactly what was described by the narration, making it just redundant and unnecessary. We could just dive into the story and the action without the voiceover and still know exactly what's going on. Another shortcoming is some of the action. While it is fun to watch and it creates a lot of tense excitement, a lot of the time when there's that close quarter hand-to-hand fighting, the camera, it's just too close to the action. It just creates a blurry mess of bodies colliding where we can't actually see or decipher what's taking place. Now, this doesn't happen every time there's a fight, but when it does, the intensity of that battle, it's reduced. And there's also a building absurdity as the movie goes along. While the action is a bit ridiculous at the start, especially when landmines are used in the creative ways, it still has a slight level of believability. But when the movie reaches the final act, you gotta just suspend all disbelief and just go with it. It's wildly implausible, but it's totally exciting. And plus, the longer the sequences go on, the more obvious the outcomes become. I mean, we can tell how a fight is going to conclude and how somebody's going to meet their end thanks to camera movements that just telegraph the forthcoming action. And then for the story itself, this is a very simple and basic one. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you do need to know going in that deep exposition and meaningful character arcs, they're not going to be part of the experience. The visuals in this are haunting and beautiful. So much of the landscapes are barren and open, but are also marred by the destruction of the Nazi soldiers. Their orders to raise everything builds harrowing backdrops, and the cinematography does an excellent job of translating the devastation through the screen. So overall, SISU is an exciting and brutal adventure accentuated by extreme violence. The theater crowd experience is definitely the way to watch this, as viewers squirm and wince and gasp at the spectacle. While some of the action is absurd and the story itself is rather simple and thin, there's a lot of enjoyment to be had as an old man kicks Nazi butts. This may not be memorable long term, but if you're looking for insane action and gruesome kills, SISU delivers its weight in gold. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and then an absolute ton of brutal and gory violence. I give SISU 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what are some other brutally violent movies that you like to watch? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.